It is now 6:30, so I would like to open the hearing of the Marshfield Conservation Commission on Thursday, March 18th, 2020, and I would like a second, please.
Second, Craig
Craig.
Hannafin.
Yep, Craig.
Craig seconded. I'm going to do a roll call vote. Vice Chair O'Donnell,
Bert O'Donnell here.
Commissioner Carberry.
Rick Carver here.
Sorry, Vice Chair, it's to open. It's a yes.
No, it's a yes.
Bert O'Donnell, yes.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Carberry.
I'm following Bert. Rick Carver, yes.
Commissioner Karen.
Susan Karen, yes.
Commissioner Hannafin.
Craig Hannafin, yes.
Commissioner Loggy.
Art Loggy, yes.
Okay, so we are officially open for the meeting of the Marshfield
Yep.
Conservation Commission on Thursday, March 18th,
Yep.
2020. Yes, Mr. Grafton.
Jim, one last vote from yourself, and then you have
Jim Kilcoyne says yes as well. Thank you, Mr. Grafton. Well, now reopen. How's that?
Joe Ring and a doctor's appointment. He's actually got a patient. So you got a 6-0.
All right, we have Attorney Galvin with us. He's connecting to audio now. Attorney Galvin, we just did open the meeting officially. So this public hearing is being held to consider the proposed revisions to the current 505 Marshfield Wetlands Protection Regulations. These draft regulations revisions have been promulgated by the Commission pursuant to the authority granted to it under Chapter 294, 4C of the Wetlands Protection Bylaw, Chapter 294, Home Rule Authority of the Town of Marshfield, and other federal and state statutes. I will move now to the chairman's address. I'd like to introduce the commissioners by name. My name is Jim Kilcoyne. I am the chairman. We have Vice Chair O'Donnell. We have Commissioner Carberry. We have Commissioner Karen. We have Commissioner Hannafin. We have Commissioner Loggy. Also in attendance for the town, I'd like to introduce Town Council, Bob Galvin, Town Administrator, Mike Maresco, Conservation Administrator, William Grafton, Conservation Agent, Eric Flint, and as well, William Finn, a pro bono expert consultant to the Conservation Commission during this process. I will briefly review Mr. Finn's qualification credentials as an expert consultant to the Commission. Mr. Finn was a summer resident of the town from 1956 to 1961, has been a permanent resident since 1962, 65 plus years. A founder and first president of the North-South River Watershed Association. He was also elected to the Marshfield Planning Board, where he served for 16 years, 12 of those as chairman. He is a graduate of the University of Massachusetts with a Bachelor of Science in Wildlife Biology and from Harvard University with a Master's in Landscape Architecture. He holds a 7-course, 3-semester Certificate of Professional Achievement in Environmental Site Investigation and Remediation from Northeast University. He holds an 8-course, 2-semester Paralegal Study Certificate from the University of Massachusetts Lowell. He also holds a national certification as a paralegal. Before starting his firm in 1987, Bill spent 15 years working for the engineering consulting firms and the last 12 as a project manager for the national firm of Metcalf and Eddy, Inc. Particular to the interest of the Conservation Commission, Bill has completed the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers certification program for wetland delineation and the University of Massachusetts Invasive Plant Management Certificate Program. His professional affiliations include, among others, membership in the Wildlife Society, Society of the Wetland Scientists, and the Massachusetts Real Estate Bar Association, where he serves as a member of the environmental law and land use and zoning sections. He has also been awarded a certificate of appreciation by the American Council of Engineering Companies for his efforts to establish and serve as the co-chair of the Council's Environmental Affairs Committee. He has completed 30 hours of mediation training required by the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court under Rule 8. He's been recognized as an expert witness in wetland matters by the Middlesex County Superior Court. He is currently the president of William C. Finn, Inc., an environmental consulting firm based here in Marshfield. But by way of background, the Marshfield Chapter 505 Wetlands Protection Regulations were adopted by the Marshfield Conservation Commission on May 15, 1990, and have been subsequently amended through May 1st, 2008. Purpose of the regulations is to provide definitions, procedures, and standards for work within those areas subject to the protection under the town's bylaw. Any project subject to the bylaw must comply with all applicable regulations. The existing and new regulations are basically guidance relating certain activities within the jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission where necessary prevent certain activities that have significant and/or cumulative adverse impacts upon any of the interests of the bylaw. These new regulations will better define and clarify the process by establishing standard definitions and unified procedures by which the Marshfield Conservation Commission may carry out its responsibilities under the bylaw. These regulations are intended solely for the use in administrating the bylaw. Nothing contained herein should be construed as preempting or precluding other protections afforded to the jurisdiction or resource areas by other federal, state, or Marshfield town boards, regulations or bylaws. There's been tremendous amount of changes in our town and its resource areas in the 20 years since the adoption of the regulations in 1990. In 2018, Mr. Graft and Mr. Finn undertook the first phase, developing the baseline draft document. And a year and a half later, the chair, myself, and Vice Chair O'Donnell joined in developing the baseline document. A year and a half later, joined furthering the document development. I apologize. Town Council Attorney Galvin received the first document in early 2019, which resulted in significant improvements. Attorney Galvin continued to review the process in 2020, providing final review and approval in January 2021. This draft document was then distributed on January 26, 2021 to the full commission for their review and comment. The draft regulations were placed on the Town of Marshfield website, including landing page on February 25th, 2021, as well as in the Conservation Commission information page. 2 public meeting notices announcing this evening's hearing were placed in the Marshfield Mariner on March 3rd, 2021, and again on March 10th, 2020. These new regulations include clarification to the jurisdiction and better explaining procedures of the commission as exemplified by the format now is consistent with the Town Code, Chapter 294. The document is divided into 4 parts, which are subdivided into articles, which are further subdivided into sections. The expansion of the defined terms and performance standards. They create a new section, Part 2, which provides jurisdictional performance standards for the resource areas. The buffer zone is a jurisdictional resource area under the bylaw, and activities undertaken within the zone are clarified in Part 2, Article 6.0. Part 3 revises existing 505-10 performance standards, including peers. Part 4 replaces existing 505-15 with Article 1.0 effective dates. Public hearing section will proceed as follows. A, Commission will discuss the draft Chapter 505 Wetlands Protection Regulations, taking comments and/or suggested revisions. The Commissioner's prior comments were received and addressed for the review in your final document this evening. This is a closed discussion period of the Commissioners for comments and discussion. B, the Commission will hear public comments on the draft of 505 regulations. This section is for public comment. All comments shall be addressed to the Chairman. Public comments stated shall be considered by the Commission in their deliberation. Please state your name and address prior to comment. If you have a written comment, please provide a contact information so we may get back to you if necessary. C, the Commission will discuss the action items. This again will be a closed discussion period for the Commission. And D, Commission will motion for the continuance or approval. Here, the Commission will consider a motion for the adoption of the draft 505 regulations as written or modified, or continue the hearing to a date certain. Such conditions shall only consider those portions of the draft 505 regulations not adopted at this evening's hearings. This is a closed discussion procedural vote requiring a motion, a second, and then a roll call vote. With that, I would like to read the announcement in compliance with the regulations of the Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40 of the Wetlands Protection Act, and the Code of Town of Marshfield, Chapter 294, Wetlands Protection. A public hearing will be held by the Marshfield Conservation Commission on Tuesday, March 18, 2021, 6:30 p.m. by Zoom to consider and discuss the Draft Chapter 505 Marshfield Wetland Protection Regulations revisions, receive public comments, approve revisions, adopt draft, and close or continue the public hearing. I'm not going to proceed with the public hearing section. We're going to start with Part A, the commissioner discussion. The commissioners have received this document prior to this meeting for review. I'll do a roll call vote for each comment slot. For the commissioners, as I said, we received your prior comments. During your comment slot, you may restate your prior comments or add additional comments. After the roll call comment slots, we will have an open discussion if needed prior to moving to Part B, which is public comment. So I'll start first, if I may, with a recap of the comments and changes, followed by the commissioners in alphabetical order. I'll keep these things intact here for myself. Substantive changes to the language in the sections related to the procedures for the request for the determination of applicability 505-106.3 and applicability for septic systems 505-301.1. There were minor formatting changes, including font, paragraph style, capitalization, punctuation, and wording. We are also going to replace any numbers that were spelled out versus numbers, and where grammatically appropriate, will create a uniform style. So now I will go over my comment section as well. The substantive changes, which is Part 1, Article 6, Procedures 505-106.3, Determination of Applicability / WPA Form 2. Within that, there is a sentence that says, once the commission closes the public hearing, it shall issue a determination within 21 days for the RDA. That is being struck. Unless there is an extension, the commission shall issue a determination within 21 days of the receipt of the request shall be inserted. Part 3, Article 1, Septic Systems, 505-301.1 applicability. We are going to add in 3A3, under it is located 50 feet or more from the resource area, we're going to add other than the buffer zone. That's the only word we're adding there. Those for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 words, other than the buffer zone. Once again, is located 50 feet or more from a resource area other than the buffer zone. That is 31505A3. So with that, we will move now to Part A, which is closed discussion period for the commissioners. In comment period, I will start off with Vice Chair O'Donnell, if he'd like to restate any comments he previously made or have any additional comments he'd like for this evening. Vice Chair,
I've worked with this for close to a year now. I have no further comments at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Commissioner Carberry.
Yeah, I'm good also. I've been through the documents and have made my inputs and comments, and sent them to Mr. Finn, and I'm good at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Carberry. Commissioner Karen.
I have no further comment. I'm impressed with the level of detail. I think this is going to be helpful to the community, and I have no further comments.
Thank you, Commissioner Karen. Commissioner Hannafin.
I have no further comments. I merely wish to commend Mr. Finn, Vice Chair O'Donnell, Mr. Grafton, and Chairman Kilcoyne on all of their hard work. This is a nice document.
Thank you, Commissioner Hannafin. Commissioner Loggy.
I have no other comments. I also think that this is a great document. You guys did a lot of work on this, and it's very much appreciated. And I think it's a stellar thing that we have here.
Thank you, Commissioner Loggy. Trying to find my little section here, which is here we go. On the piece of paper here to run by Zoom. All right, so now we'll move to Part B. Commissioners will have comments on the draft of 5 regulations. This section is for public comment. All comments shall be addressed to the chairman. You must be recognized by the chairman. Public comments stated will be considered by the commission in deliberation. As a reminder, please state your name and address prior to comment. If you have a written comment, please provide contact information so we may get back to you if necessary. I will now open this up to the public if someone would like to address the commission.
If I might ask, Mr. Chairman, this is Joe Pasevich on Wilson Road,
25 Wilson, Joe?
25.
Thank you.
Evening, Mr. Pacific.
Yeah, what's up? I mean, are you taking comments on the entire document at this point?
That is correct, sir.
Oh, okay. I don't know how to put this, and hopefully staying within the protocols that you've established for this public hearing. But I'm having a little issue with determining how de minimis activities are going to be handled in terms of fees. I know there's sort of a general statement on what constitutes a de minimis activity. Could anybody provide any enlightenment on that subject?
Yes.
Is that appropriate for me to ask that at this stage?
It certainly is. We're able to help you out with that. There are no fees associated with the 505 draft revisions we are proposing this evening. That is in a separate area. So hopefully that answers that one for you. Mr. Finn, our expert here, where are you?
Right here.
Would you like to help answer that question, Mrs. Pesovich?
Well, the de minimis activity is defined as any activity in which in the judgment of the Conservation Commission will have minimal, if any, adverse effect on a resource area and does not require a conservation permit. So in other words, I'll give you an example, Joe. About 2 years ago, we dedicated the South River Park. We had a dedication ceremony there, dedicating it as part of the National Natural Landmark system of the National Park Service. During that dedication process, or in preparation for it, we had to place a large boulder next to the south, on the bank, so to speak, of the South River, upon which we were mounting a plaque. And that activity under the existing bylaw required us to submit a determination of applicability. And at the time, I believe Commissioner Carone submitted several plans and had several conversations, attended a meeting with the Conservation Commission. I believe that under this bylaw, that kind of an activity, placing that boulder on the bank of the river where there was no adverse impact in any respect, would be considered a de minimis activity and would not require a permit or a permitting activity, and it could be judged by the Conservation Commission as such. That's an example.
Thank you, Mr. Finn. Also, I may add that, Joe, that de minimis activities have to be ratified by a majority vote of the Conservation Commission.
Jim, real quick, just to enunciate a little bit further. It was a previously disturbed environment, so there were no trees taken down. There was no other activity. It was a simple placement in the buffer zone and also in the riverfront. So Mr. Finn has pointed out an important example which really elucidates the concept of the de minimis activity. There's others, but that was perfect.
Thank you, Administrator Grafton. Any other people in the public who would like to comment?
Could I just ask for some more input on that? I assume that the example that was given was dealing with town property, for one thing, and as stated previously, disturbed. As you know, I've had issues with my property where I've got overgrowth of branches.
Correct.
From a isolated wetland, and as the branches continue to arc out over my lawn, it gets harder and harder to maintain my lawn, which has been a lawn for over 50 years. And I thought there might be some movement on those types of cases. But what's the point? Where is the point, and where is it in here where you apply for a determination if something is de minimis?
Attorney Galvin, I believe you would like to speak.
Well, I was going to actually use the example that Mr. Pesovich is actually speaking about. We may have a tree that's located in a wetland resource area with a branch that is diseased or broken or storm damaged that needs to be taken down. it's possible that that branch, well, if you alter the vegetation in a wetland, you're technically doing something that the bylaw implicates. But the permission to take down a branch which could kill somebody or, pose a threat, without being an immediate threat is probably a de minimis activity. And that might relate to Mr. Pesovich's situation with his tree.
Yeah, absolutely. Joe, we talked about the exact thing briefly one day.
Yeah. If I may ask about another section, make a comment.
Certainly, Mr.
On,
Pesovich.
thank you. On vernal pools, I think the definition of a vernal pool is, I don't know if it's written in here as consistent with the state definition. It seems kind of nebulous. For example, on page 48, it refers to a vernal pool as a depression which is at least in most years holds water for a minimum of 2 continuous months or contains water at some time. Those terms, at least in most years, and at some time, that just strikes me as kind of nebulous. I wish you could have pinned it down a little bit better than that. That's a comment. You can take it for whatever you want to do with it.
Thank you, Mr. Pesovich. Any other comment?
But those are just 2 of the main things that I wanted to comment on at this point. It is an impressive document, but again, those are 2 examples where I thought the language was a little bit nebulous and could be interpreted various ways.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else here from the public have a comment?
Thanks, Joe.
comment.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Mc-
So, do
Mr.
respect name and address, please.
Yes, Mr. McGovern.
Mr. McGovern, Terry McGovern from Stenbeck and Taylor Engineers. I just have a couple of quick questions as someone who frequently deals with the commission, and this is so that I can properly advise people going forward. There's a couple of sections that just have me a little bit unclear. The first being 505-103.4 exceptions. It's kind of broad language that looks like it gets picked up in some of your performance standard requirements for BVWs and buffer zones a little bit later. And it says exceptions may be made at the discretion of the commission or the conservation administrator for maintaining, repairing, or replacing, but not substantially changing or enlarging an existing and lawfully located structure, etc. And I'm just curious about how that fits in. I mean, normally we're filing with the commission either an RDA or a notice of intent. So what are we asking for an exception for in that case?
Mr. Galvin and Mr. Finn, would you like to take that question from Mr. McGovern? Mr. Galvin, go ahead.
So
Attorney Galvin. Sorry, Attorney
this
Galvin.
is the existing language of the existing regulations.
That's correct.
There was a belief, at least on the part of the working group that was working with the draft document, that if we didn't maintain many, if not all of the existing exceptions, it'd be a lot of opposition because people have become accustomed to these exceptions. So we actually just brought that forward and we didn't change it. We felt it was important, unlike some other communities that don't allow any exceptions and they don't allow any variances.
Okay.
To do that.
It's kind of like the permissive harbor.
We considered this very thoroughly and we just brought that language. That's the existing language, Terry.
Okay.
Mr. McGovern, any other questions or comments?
Just one other thing towards the end, I note the prohibition on any new structures as defined in both VE zones and AO zones. And just looking briefly at the current FEMA maps, the AO zones also include a significant portion of what I call the numbered roads along Fieldston into the lower part of Ocean Bluff. And I'm curious as to how that was arrived at in that particular area. I can understand V zones. Certainly there's cause to be able to elevate structures and we want to try to flood proof them at all possible. But I'm just curious about the AO zones, particularly in that area.
Certainly. Attorney Galvin or Mr. Finn, would you like to handle that?
Bert, I would refer to Bert for a bit on that.
Actually, Bill, I think this would be an appropriate time to speak about that we expect new regulations from the state as far as land subject to coastal flooding, and that we may have to revisit this section at that time. Is that an appropriate answer for that?
Yes, I think it is because, as you know, land, let's see.
Subject to coastal flowage.
Yeah, land subject to coastal flowage. For the past 3 years, the DEP has been trying to come up with performance standards for land subject to coastal flowage. I attended a meeting 2 weeks ago or so where the commissioner of DEP promised for the third year in a row that they were going to come forward with performance standards for land subject to coastal flowage. He'd expect them out this summer. When those come out, we would envision having another public hearing and adopting standards that deal with that issue and kind of replacing the FEMA stuff that's in these regulations right now. So when the DEP comes out with those standards, those performance standards. So I think that's when we'll be dealing with questions like you're raising right now.
Okay, thank you. That I also assume takes in that 2.8 foot rise in 100 year. I assumed something was coming in the state building code or possibly changes to the FEMA regs. And now I understand this is being drafted kind of in anticipation of those.
Yes, and as I say, they've been struggling with this at DEP for 3 years now. And they believe they have it down. And we've been promised this, and the commission is pretty sure. He thinks they'll be out this summer, but he's certain that they'll be out this year, this calendar year.
Thank you.
Attorney Galvin.
So these AO zones are an area where there's shallow flooding, and building and structures under the state building code already have to be elevated at least as high as the highest adjacent grade specified in feet on the firm maps. So it was at least my view that this was an appropriate type of regulation because the AO and the V zones are now the zones where we don't want to see a lot of new changes. And frankly, we think this is what will ultimately come out from the state.
Okay, thank you.
Does that help you, Mr. McGovern?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Any other questions, Mr. McGovern?
I don't have any, thank you. I think the rest of it is it's very thorough. Those were two areas I just happened to highlight.
Our pleasure. Mr. Cusick, I do believe that you motion that you'd like to make a comment.
Yeah, I was going to make a comment, but some of the questions by Mr. McGovern and Attorney Galvin and Mr. Finn has answered my questions. I know things are going to change, so we'll wait and see what happens.
Okay, just for the record, Mr. Cusick, would you be kind enough to state your name and address?
Thank you.
I live in, well, you know Waterman Ave. I live at number 12.
Thank you. Thank you, John.
Yeah, it's just for the record, John, it has to be stated in.
That's fine. We don't enforce that too much at the Deep Board of Public Works meetings, but I understand it.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Cusick.
You're welcome.
Any other comments from the public?
If I may, I have a Columbo moment where I forgot to throw something in. Under resource areas, Mr. Chairman, I would like to have seen mention of forested wetlands, which are a very, very important part of Marshfield. I saw no mention of forested wetlands.
Can you elaborate so we can dice into that? Because we think we've got broad enough categories, but it could be interesting. Help us
Yeah,
out.
you know what I'm saying. You have like shellfish habitats and fish habitats, wildlife habitats, etc. So in other words, it's such a long list. Some things seem to be very specific.
Oh,
Mr.
in terms of
Pesovich,
functionality.
He's talking about the-
if I may, Mr. Pesovich,
Yeah,
forested habitat, along with the other types of habitat I mentioned, are not actually resource areas defined by the state. They are parts of resource areas, but the formal definition and heading of a resource area, there is no resource area defined as forested. It is part of a bordering vegetated wetland. It can be part of another kind of wetland, but there is no formal resource area designated as forested wetland.
thank you.
Yeah.
That helps me understand your thinking on that. I appreciate it.
Yep,
And I
my
also
pleasure.
want to say, yeah, I do myself hope that the DEP comes back with better definition of performance standards for LSCF and for floodplains.
They've been promising it for a while, and they're close. They're real
Yeah.
close.
Yeah, I had some discussion with them about that last year. Thank you, guys.
Yep, you're very
Thank you.
welcome. Any other members of the public who would like to make a comment?
One last quick question, Mr. Chair.
Maybe Terry
Yes,
McGovern?
Mr. McGovern, if
Terry
Mr.
McGovern.
McGovern, I know you spoke before, if you'd be kind enough to state your name and your address.
Terry McGovern, Stenbeck and Taylor Engineers, Webster Street. Very
Thank you.
briefly, your mitigation permit process. As I'm reading it, this would be something that would be issued in addition to an orders of conditions under what I read to be special circumstances where there's work requiring some sort of, say, replication plantings or mitigation of some kind that would be above and beyond what you might normally. Would this be a standard thing that would happen on every project, or would this be something that would be, where the amount of mitigation is fairly intense? That would
Could
be
I answer that, Mr. Chairman?
You may, Mr. Finn.
Mr. McGovern, the only time a mitigation permit will be allowed will be in dealing with the buffer zone resource area, number one. And number two, it will be part of the order of conditions.
Okay. Thank you. I was concerned about having to chase and record another document for my.
No, it will be part of the order of conditions.
Okay, thank you.
Did I answer your question, Mr. McGovern?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much for allowing me to ask the questions.
Our
Thank you,
pleasure.
Terry.
Our pleasure.
Chief professionalism.
Any other comments from the public? Not hearing any. We will now move then from Part B to Part C.
Mr. Chair, could I just, to address Mr. Pesovich's question about the vernal pools, I've been looking through my notes. I haven't been able to locate it. Mr. Finn may be able to tell us, I think there was clear language about the number of years with the vernal pool, because that was a question that came up among commissioners too. Do you recall that, Bill?
I recall the discussion about vernal pools. I don't recall specifically the number of years. I think it might be 2, but I'm
I
not
thought
sure.
we referenced Cornell's study. Was that part?
That's a reference. That's a reference that that we're going to include in the policy and procedures manual.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's correct, Bert.
But that gives further definition to it from Mr.
And well,
Pesovich.
that's correct. That's the idea of including in the policy and procedures manual to give further clarification to the vernal pool issue.
Mr. Chairman, just one sec. There's a separate document, policy and procedure guide, that part of it will be on the website, and the rest is for performance in the office and under the commission's guidance. Just so everybody understands that.
Thank you, Mr. Grafton. All right, I will just make one last call again. Any other comments from the public? I heard none before, and we're ready to move on to Part C. Okay, without comment, I will move on to Part C. This is the commission action items that we have as a result of this. I'll open up by saying this. I think we've taken the comments from the public. It seems like all the comments, questions we had from the public were answered here this evening. So there probably isn't a lot for us to discuss regarding the comments as far as action items. I will make it official. I will take a roll call vote to assure myself as such. As Chair Jim Kilcoyne, I do not. Vice Chair O'Donnell.
I do not.
Commissioner Carberry.
Rick Carberry, I do not.
Commissioner Karen.
Susan Karen, I do not.
Commissioner Hannafin.
Craig Hannafin, I do not.
Commissioner Laggy.
Art Loggy, I do not.
Okay, thank you very much, commissioners.
Jim, yourself.
I started out saying I did not.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Mr.
We're
Chairman,
now done with Part C. We're now moving on to Part D. I will read out again for Part D so the commissioners and the public can
A
understand.
question from town council, Mr. Chairman.
so
I'm sorry, Attorney Galvin, go ahead.
that's all right. I didn't want to interrupt you. And I think I'm probably anticipating something you might say anyways, but if the commission and when the commission moves to an approval stage, it would make sense to allow the final regulations before they get posted to be further reviewed by the code publishers so that any other clerical or numerical issues are able to be resolved so that the new regulations are assimilated into our existing numbering system in the town code.
That is exactly correct. Thank you, Attorney Galvin. I will add here also that this will have to go off to the coders to just make sure that all our fonts and things of that are correct. And we do anticipate this being a new big project. It was a 3-year effort. And we anticipate that we may have to make small minor changes as we move along. The kind of goal that we're going to have is we're going to accumulate those changes, notes of them as necessary during different hearings. And then when the new regulations, which Mr. Finn spoke about regarding land subject to coastal flowage comes out, we'll try to adopt all of them at once and then clean up the document in total. So that was the plan, Attorney Galvin. Thank you very much. So Part D now, the commission will motion for continuation or approval. Here the commission will consider a motion for the adoption of the draft 505 regulations as written, modified, or continue the hearing to a date certain. Such continuation shall only consider those portions of the draft 505 regulations not adopted at this evening's hearing. This is a closed procedural vote requiring a second and then a roll call vote. Attorney Galvin, if I may have some guidance here from you on this. I think the only thing I heard that we're going to do immediately on this, before we send it out to the coders who will pick up all our grammatical issues, are the two what we call substantive changes that I outlined earlier in the evening. One was Part 1, Section 6, Procedures 505, 106, Determination of Applicability. And we struck once the commission closes the public hearing, it shall issue a determination within 21 days. We substitute, unless there is an extension, the commission shall issue a determination within 21 days of receipt. And the second was Part 3, Article 1, Septic Systems, 505, 301.1, Applicability. This is A3, where we added the words other than the buffer zone when we're talking about the septic system being located 50 feet or more from a resource area.
Right.
So, commissioners, that is what is in front of you for adoption this evening with those modifications. Knowing it is now going to go to the coder, those are just not substantive changes. Those are just grammatical. We've got some font issues and things like that. We want to make sure that when it's done right by a coder. So all the pages line up with the table of contents and it's done correctly. And then we will take consideration moving forward at each hearing, knowing full well we might have to make some minor changes. And we'll queue those all up and we'll hopefully do those all at once when we do the land subject to coastal flowage. as I think Ms. Pesovich brought up. With that, I would like to make a motion that we adopt these draft 505 regulations as written, as noted with the modifications that I just stated. And I would like to look for a second for that.
Second, Bert O'Donnell.
Bill, Bert O'Donnell?
Correct. I got that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Vice Chairman.
Okay, I'm going to go with the vice chair starting first, then in alphabetical order, and then I will conclude. Vice Chair O'Donnell.
Bert O'Donnell, yes.
Commissioner Carberry.
Rick Carberry, yes.
Commissioner Karen.
Susan Karen, yes.
Commissioner Hannafin.
Craig Hannafin, yes.
Commissioner Loggy.
Art Loggy, yes.
Jim Kilcoyne, yes. With that, we have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 0 vote to adopt the 505 draft regulations as stated this evening with the 2 changes. Thank you very much. Unless there are any other comments from any members of the commission, Michael Maresco, Attorney Galvin, Mr. Finn.
Quick comment from me. So these regulations will be effective now, but they will be finally reformatted and then also published once they've been finally formatted. So what we have now with the 2 edits that you mentioned will be posted online and will be effective from tonight going forward.
Yes, Mr. Galvin, go ahead.
It's Grafton. I just want to thank everybody.
Sorry, Mr. Grafton.
I just want to make a broad statement. I want to thank everybody on this this evening. People that started, like Eric, people that have been at this, like Bill Finn from the beginning, Attorney Galvin, Michael Maresco, all the commissioners, Joe Yu, Terry, John Cusick. I think you helped make this stronger by participating. And I just want to say that's great. That makes it better. It's now more of the towns than ever before. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grafton. I'll just close with a short comment. I concur with the words that Mr. Grafton articulated. I would like to give a special, exemplary, huge call out to Mr. Bill Finn. There's no way these 505s would have been done without him. He was a phenomenal asset to the town and helping the town. I can't thank Mr. Finn enough for his assistance during this. These 505s would not be as good, would not be as clear and as beneficial to the town without his tremendous amount of time and energy. So with that, I'd really like to give a thanks to you, Mr. Finn, for your work and your energy on this project. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely second that.
Yeah. I'd almost like to hear his list of accomplishments and affiliations again.
You added the 505s to the list. Come on.
All right. With that, I shall officially request that we are going to close the meeting of the Marshfield Conservation Commission on March 18th, 2020. And I would like to have a second. We'll do a roll call vote and the meeting shall be closed.
Second, Susan Karen.
Did you catch that, Bill?
I caught it, Susan Karen, indeed.
All right. We'll go starting with the vice chair in alphabetical order. Vice Chair O'Donnell.
Bert O'Donnell, yes.
Commissioner Carberry.
Rick Carberry, yes.
Commissioner Karen.
Susan Karen, yes.
Commissioner Hannafin.
Craig Hannafin, yes.
Commissioner Loggy.
Art Loggy, yes.
Jim Kilcoyne is a yes. Meeting is officially closed. Thanks everyone for their participation on this project. It was a fun and it's going to be great for the town. Thank you for the participation this evening and we'll see you at the next meeting.
Congratulations to everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You too, Bill. Thank you.
Congratulations to you, Bill.
No doubt. Well
Take a
Thank you very
vacation.
Take
I'm
care.
gonna take a vacation. That's a good idea.